Welcome back to Eurosport's second super racing weekend at the rain and snow-swept Brno circuit in the Czech Republic. I'm Martin Haven, alongside me David Leslie. We're going to take a look now at the Euro STC races. Nicola Larini and Fabrizio Giovanardi, the championship leaders after the first race, and it's Giovanardi who'll start from pole position in his Alfa for the first race here in this second weekend. Gabriele Tarquini outside of the front row of the grid in his Honda, but there is no Honda on the grid for Fabrice Walfisch, and we'll find out why now.
They broke
the engine during the warm-up, he said. Wasn't a mistake by me. We had no warning before the failure. It just flew, and he said, so we don't know why that happened. Go in qualifying as well on Sunday. So, ready for the start of the race, and Roberto Colciaggio diving into the lead in a manner best seen. I can't remember when I've quite seen so effective a dive between the front row men. Roberto Colciaggio, of course, in the Audi Quattro, and on this wet race, let's have a look. There he goes from third on the grid. As the front-wheel drive car sitting there spinning the wheels, he selects first gear and motors on, and the green lights show that it was a green light situation. So Roberto Colciaggio leading from Gabriele Tarquini and the two Alfas, the Nord Auto cars. There's Giovanardi, and there's teammate Nicola Larini getting by him. David, we gave Colciaggio a little bit of stick in the damp qualifying for not being fast enough with the four-wheel drive Audi, but still used four-wheel drive to perfection there away from the line.
Without doubt, that's what we've been used to seeing from the four-wheel drive cars at start. Both, especially on the wet as we've seen here, but even on a dry circuit, you can just shoot off that start like it's no tomorrow. And we've seen that there. He hasn't made best use of it, and now he's got Tarquini going past the inside, or going round him up the inside. Not too good that. That won't do anybody any good whatsoever.
Well, Tarquini, of course, with less efficient braking and traction than the four-wheel drive car, gets hooked up across the nose of Colciaggio, and off he goes, and here is the opposite angle, and that's a very difficult situation to get out of. Gabriele's on the brakes there, so too is Roberto, but the accident was happening, and once that tail starts to come round like that, David, there's precious little you can do about it. Gabriele, well, not exactly happy with the situation, but he's not a man to bear a grudge, I have to say. He'll probably go over to Roberto afterwards. And
I was controlled the race, and I think Colciaggio is completely crazy, because he went into me and I went off. So at this time I was faster than him, but I mean, I play for the championship, and in this condition he have a little advantage, but I don't think that for this reason he can crash to everybody. So that's... But I mean, like Monza, I lost a lot of points, and it's a shame.
A shame indeed, and that left the race open for Nicola Larini and Fabrizio Giovanardi. And Larini sitting in the driving seat, having already passed Fab on the first lap. Nicola in the lead, but Giovanardi not sufficiently enamoured of that situation to let it remain for long. Coming up behind the back markers, trying to make a move on Larini. And Larini somehow squeezing between Giovanardi and the back marker to retake the lead. Of course, Larini is the championship points leader. Giovanardi, last year's Euro STC champion, finishing in second place as Larini wins his second race in 3 starts. So Tarquini out of the first race for the second weekend in succession. Larini and Giovanardi racking up the points once more, first and second for Alfa Romeo.
It looks as though it was a good battle at the end with Fabrizio.
Yeah, I lost my front left tires, and my car was lower 2-3 seconds compared to the beginning. But there was good fighting, and at the end I won.
Good fighting indeed, and the Nord Auto Alfa team, I'm sure, just delighted that both cars managed to avoid taking each other off in these streaming wet conditions. That would have been very easy indeed. But it's victory number 2 of the season for Nicola Larini. Back in Brno, ready for the second FIA Super Touring race, and this race now taking place live, and after The GT cars have helped to dry out the track. The Super Tourers may have a slightly easier time than they did in the first race. David, that race streaming wet and very tricky indeed. We saw Colciaggio really rocket away from the start, but thereafter, perhaps the antiquity of the Audi showing, as within half a lap, the better developed Honda and Alfa were right with him.
Yes, they caught him very quickly there, which was not good for him at all. I'd expected him to carry on in the race like he made that start. An absolutely tremendous start from back there. But it didn't work for him, and once they had that first little touch, then immediately they had the second big touch. And it's a bad thing in Super Touring cars.
There is only 10 laps. You showed in Monza that you could get to the front. Do you think that you'll be able to do it again?
I don't know. It's really difficult because it's not a quick circuit like Monza. I think I can improve my position, this is sure, but it's really difficult to win again. I try it. This is normally, but I'm not alone. There's Giovanardi in front of me. Tarquini will start just following us. So we will see, but it's not easy like Monza.
Thank you, Nicola.
Not easy like Monza, I think, is exactly right. He is starting on the inside of row 6, so in 11th position on the grid, behind the reversed order of finishers from the first race. So Szymanczyk is starting on pole position. Emilio Zadra is Paolo Zadra rather, in the BMW alongside him. And then Bernardoni in the Nord Auto Alfa, car number 3, will start on the inside of the second row of the grid, and Sergio Sambataro in another Audi Quattro will start in 4th place. Further back behind Giovanardi and Larini are Fabrice Valfish, who failed to start the first race because of a broken engine. Here he is with hopefully a more successful engine on board this time. You may be able to grab a word with him as well.
You're ready for the second race. Do you think that you'll be able to finish the race?
I don't hear anything, but I'm going to do the race. It's good to drive again.
Thank you, Fabrice. Good luck.
He sits alongside Nicola Larini, the winner of the first race. There he is. And further back, well, no Gabriele Tarquini. Roberto Colciaggio is on the grid, who went off with Gabriele Tarquini in the first race. But Tarquini is starting from the pit lane, and the reason for that, I'm afraid, we do not know. In fact, I'm just being told that Colciaggio is also going to be forced to start from the pits, perhaps as a result of that earlier clash. So the grid we've been given being amended. You can see the BMW of Gianluca Di Lorenzi further back, and there he is. He also failed to finish. Sardelli went off as well, and he is further back. And Angelo Lancialotti in the number 9 car was disqualified after the race for ignoring a black and orange flag for 4 laps. So he starts stone at last. Well, apart from those who are starting from the pit lane. Gets a little confusing, doesn't it? Let's go to Fabrizio Giovanardi and see if he can make sense of some of it.
Fabrizio, you had a great race with your teammate Nicola in the first race. Do you think that you'll be able to beat him and win this second race?
I don't know. I said the same thing in the first race, but I didn't win. I will try to win, but I think we must think about all the championship is really long.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio.
I wonder if that was a plea to Nicola Larini to just calm it a little bit. He said it is a long championship. They've been helped greatly, David, really, by the problems for Gabriele Tarquini in the first race, both here and at Monza, where he didn't score any points. But it's going to be not very difficult to visualise the two of them tangling at some stage and neither of them scoring any points, and that would be a bit of a disaster for them.
Yeah, we can certainly see that happening. You can see in the races so far they've been nose to tail, and they've fought them between themselves all the way to the finish. And yes, somewhere along the line these two very hard charging drivers are actually going to run into each other. That's not going to help the Nord Auto team a lot, but at the moment they've been right up there, because Larini has managed to beat Giovanardi each time they've been out in the 3 races they've had so far in the championship. Still only 15 points in it. Larini 115 points in the championship with Giovinazzi 100 points in the championship, first and second. But unfortunately, Gabriele Tarquini is way down in 15th place in this championship with only 40 points. So that coming together with Cole Giorgio in the first race we've just seen has hurt him even more than falling off himself at Monza when he jumped over the curb, lost the back end of the car and smashed it very hard into the tyre wall. So his championship, Tarquini's has started very, very badly. And the two Nordario Alphas of Nicola Larini and Giovinazzi off to an absolute flying start. And I'm pretty sure while they'll find it more difficult on this circuit compared to Monza to make it through there, I'm pretty sure they'll get through to the front of the grid. It might take them a little bit longer, and on this damp and drying track, I'm sure that some of these cars in front, the slightly more inexperienced guys, are going to find it very, very difficult, and I can see a little tap here and there happening just to liven the race up a bit.
And of course, for their benefit, even if they don't get to the front, Gabriele Tarquini starts from the pit lane with therefore a distinct time disadvantage, because he won't be up to speed as these guys are accelerating into the first corner, but also half a dozen cars between even him and the tail end of the nearest Alpha. So one of those is his teammate Fabrice Valfish, but for Gabriele Tarquini it's an even more uphill struggle.
We can see them on the start line here. Now we know the racing line when you come out of that last corner is over onto the right hand side of the screen as we look at it, the left hand side of the circuit. So as you can see, that BMW, that very bright blue, yellow and red one, moving immediately over to try and get onto that dry line. So the people on the right hand side of the circuit, as we're looking at it, they're going to be able to get quite a good start, where the people on the left hand side are going to be on a much damper part of the circuit. So I can see the pole man certainly struggling here. And for some unknown reason, I'm talking about pole being on the left, because yesterday...
Pole on the right here. We saw yesterday that pole was on the right in the Formula Renault race, but in the dry, the left-hand line was a much, much quicker line down into the first corner. It delivered you there well up the inside of the pole man. We saw our pole man in the Formula Renault race immediately weave across to try and block off his fellow front row starter. But as you say, the advantage in traction here, and particularly because the only dry line into the first turn is way over there on the left-hand side as well, means that even if you do take a run down the inside, not only are you going to be slower away on the wet grid, but you're also going to have to brake earlier on the inside wet line, and that should mean that Heinrich Simanchik in his Opel Vectra, who sits on pole by dint of being the last man to finish the first race, should be the leader into the first corner. But Paolo Zadra in the BMW, well, he's got a rear drive BMW, and they tend to be a little quicker off the line than the front drive cars, so maybe that will help in his favour. But ooh, look up in the sky, fluffy white clouds there and lots of them, but some big black stuff hanging around, and suddenly noticeable is the lack of sunshine, David, which we saw quite clearly at the end of the GTs. Looks like there's another bit of weather on its way.
Luckily this race is quite a short race, it's only 10 laps, so these guys will be hoping very much that it's going to be a dry race, and they really don't want in the 10 laps that they've got out there to be having another shower out there, whether it be snow or rain, but they'll want to stay on that dry piece of the circuit, that very small dry piece of the circuit. We can see there on the racing line it's okay, but there's damp parts all over the circuit.
And it is definitely getting more and more gloomy, and that may be a portent of poor weather. But I think in those conditions we'll probably see the star drivers, the Larinis, the Giovinazzis, the Tarquinis faring even better than the others, just purely on talent alone. Ready to go for the second Super Touring race at Brno. This is the fourth race of the championship, a pair of these 50-kilometre double-header races at every race weekend on the Super Racing Weekend calendar. And with 2 victories already to his credit from 3 starts, Nicola Larini starting on the inside of row 6 on this reversed finishing order from the first race grid that starts the lineup. Roberto Colciaggio heads Gabriele Tarquini in the queue to leave the pit lane, because they are starting both from the pit lane. Stewards clearly unable to decide whose fault it was, their collision on lap 1 of the first race, and therefore deciding that both of them should start from the pits. Well, Nicola Larini's got a fair few cars ahead of him. Starts on the dry line on the left-hand side of the racetrack, the right of the picture as we look at it, way back there, 3 from the end of the grid on that right-hand file as you're looking at it. The black Opel Vectra, Heinrich Simanchik, the multicolour BMW Paolo Zadra, they are the front row men. Then Romano Bernardini in the number 3 Nordauto Alfa, and Sergio Sambatore, the other red car on the second line, creeping away very slowly indeed, are the front row men. But look how quickly the Audis have gone, and look also how quickly the Nordauto Alfas have got their power down. It is Simanchik that leads, but Zadra has been blown away by the rest of the field. The BMW 5th into the first turn, and problems behind. Off goes one of the Audis and another of the Opel Vectras. But it is the Audi that leads, and that will be Roberto Toccacello, I would think. No, it can't be Enrico Toccacello even, because he's in an Alfa Romeo. But let's concentrate on what's going on further back, because Nicola Larini we just saw, and there Fabrizio Giovanardi, well, not as easy as Monza, not as hard as Monza rather. He said at the beginning of the race they are flying through the back markers. And you see coming out of the pits just in the corner of the shot the 2 pit lane starters, and there they are. Look at that, Tarquini has already got ahead of the Audi, but Larini, how many cars ahead of him? Just 2. He is now in 3rd place, halfway round this first lap of 10. So the reverse grid leads to drama at the first corner, but not an awful lot else, I have to say. I think this is Paolo Zadra's BMW ahead of him.
It just shows the expertise of the drivers when they can set off that far back on the grid and make it through all those cars just in 1/2 lap of this 5-kilometre circuit. But no one's giving up here, everyone's fighting for their positions. And here we see Tarquini at the back and Cole Giorgio right behind him. So those 2 are going to follow each other through. I'm pretty sure that Gabrielli would have been and had a word with Roberto Giorgio and said, now look, we need to be sensible about this, we need to score some points, and we need to go through this grid rather than argue with each other on the early laps like they did in the first race. So I'm pretty sure once they get a lot further through towards the front, then they might run into each other again, but at this meantime I think they're working reasonably well together to try and get through the grid as far as possible. Yeah,
on board with Colciaggio, you're right, there is the number 4 car just ahead of him, and he is going to follow the Honda. No question in these conditions he's not going to be as fast as the Honda. It is Sergio Sambatore, his teammate, that leads, but the Alfas now go past the 2nd place man, Paolo Zadra's BMW, down to 4th in one fell swoop, and Giovanardi puts the move in on Larini. Larini opened the door there, they're side by side, wheel to wheel. Pijoli leading? Well, I don't think so. Pijoli started far too back down the order. We'll have to see. Maybe it is, in fact, maybe it is Pijoli who leads, but certainly the Alfas, 2nd and 3rd, Larini just held on there. In fact, it is Pijoli's Audi. It may well have been Sambataro who got it wrong going into the first corner, who we saw was the one of the cars that had a little collision earlier on. But Romano Bernardoni in the number 3 Nordauto Alfa, who was starting 3rd on the grid, has already been passed by Gabriele Tarquini. She was down in 10th or 11th place after the first corner kerfuffle. Quite how the Works the Nordauto lead pair managed to get their way through all of that, I really don't know, but they had a great run to the inside and the gaps just opened up in front of them.
Larini here following the leader, changing up early, and he's really stuck behind him now. He's got a big problem in that he's going to try and get past and also try and keep Giovanardi behind him. So he's got that run down that straight down the inside. Giovanardi will simply follow him through.
Well, the inside line there, nice and dry, David, wasn't it? So that gave them the grip. They've obviously got the speed in a straight line that Pijoli certainly doesn't have. But you're right, Nicola Larini's main enemy for the remaining 8 races in the championship is the guy who won last year's title and carries the number 1 plate. No question about that.
These 2 now will stretch their lead, I'm pretty sure. They've got to the front very quickly. They haven't even quite finished the 2nd lap now. They're just at the end of the 2nd lap, and they are through into 1st and 2nd place. So even starting all the way back on the 5th and 6th row of the grid, it's taken them less than the 2 laps to get through to the front. But I'm pretty sure they'll not ease up either of them, and they will battle together side by side all the way to the finish line.
Yeah, it's particularly important for Giovanardi to take a win here, because he hasn't got the points that Larini has. And down in 6th and 7th position now, Fabrice Valfish and the number 4 car, of his teammate, the man who was expected to be one of the championship front runners, Gabriele Tarquini. On pace, certainly Tarquini deserves to be there. On luck, not at all. Valfish in 6th, Tarquini in 7th. It shouldn't take them long to dispose of Gianluca De Lorenzi, or indeed of Eric Querol, the Frenchman. They've already got rid of the rest of the field. Colciaggio still following along in Tarquini's wake, just Roberto Toccacello between them. Enrico Toccacello, I must stop calling him by his brother's name. Enrico Toccacello between them. Still Larini leading though, and it looks as though he's got the measure of Giovanardi, at least for the moment. Roberto Colciaggio in the Audi, started from the pit lane with Gabriele Tarquini, and he is chasing the 2 Yasport Hondas. Across the line, it was Valfish ahead of Tarquini. Valfish took a little bit of passing by his teammate Gabriele Tarquini in the second race at Monza. Tarquini then off the road in race 1 as well, but through a fault of his own. I think you'd have to say that this first race here was really a racing incident, and probably I think Gabriele would not refer to it as a fault of his own. Larini from Giovanardi out front and running away. And David, for all the pace of the Hondas in a straight line, there's not an awful lot to choose between them and the Alfa Romeos. But the Hondas, of course, have got an awful lot of passing to do. And at the moment, looks as though Giovanardi is content to sort of sit there behind Larini and not really get too rumbustious.
I think what will happen at this early part of the race, they'll just sit there and drive away from the rest of them and not hold each other up. What they don't want to do is hold each other up, fighting all the time and letting Tarquini catch the pair of them. So they'll be very determined to just sit there and drive as fast as possible around the circuit to try and get that big gap on Tarquini so he doesn't get to them. Tarquini's still got the problem of starting out the pit lane, so he's a fair bit back, but carving through the field nonetheless. And that's him now up to 5th place there.
Just saw him put that comfortable move in on Eric Querol. Gianluca De Lorenzi passing Sergio Sambataro, the erstwhile leader, in the same moment. And Tarquini, that is, as we saw there, moving up into 5th place. I think by the time we see him next, he will have got 4th away from Sambataro. He looked to be shaping up for that move. So there you can see, in fact, he's got past Gianluca De Lorenzi as well. He's up to 3rd place. Now, what about the gap? David, you've driven these Hondas. You know what a straight line machine they are, but how about compared to the Alphas? Do you think they've got the speed to be able to close down that gap?
Well, certainly at the last meeting at Monza, they had the speed to be able to do it, but here around the much more twisty circuit that we've got at Brno in Czechoslovakia, they're certainly finding it a lot harder. So while on the one dry session they had earlier in the weekend, Gabriele again was quickest out of everyone here, including the 2 Alphas. He now has quite a bit of a gap behind to be able to try and catch the 2 leading cars up front. So I think he'll have his work cut out. And in the very short race we've got, a 10-lap race, there's something like 4 laps gone now, so he's going to struggle to get all the way up to the leaders. He may close the gap a little bit, but I can't see him getting right to the front of the grid.
Even more important then, when they come across the line, the leaders will find out that Tarquini is right behind them as Colciaggio dives inside Fabrice Valfish. Even more important for the 2 Alpha drivers not to squabble amongst themselves, because that is the one thing that will close the gap quicker than anything, is if they start diving down the inside of each other, outbraking each other and slowing up their complete lap times, then it will allow Tarquini on clear road to get closer. Eric Querol producing a storming drive here, with the Frenchman in his BMW holding off Roberto Colciaggio, and here I think we've got pretty much an even battle. Colciaggio may just get him on top-end speed and then perhaps on braking, because he can go down that inside line that Querol can't use. And he does so, goes deep to the apex. But the Frenchman, very experienced indeed in Super Touring and Super Tourism racing, with more powerful cars than these in the French Championships. And does a good job at holding off Colciaggio. Now got Valfish right there. But as you can see, Gianluca De Lorenzi in 4th place on his own, ahead of this 4-way battle now. Great stuff as they fan out across the circuit behind Colciaggio. Gabriele Tarquini, the point I was going to make, has cleared off. And Fabrice Valfish, they're being elbowed rather curmudgeonly aside by the Nissan.
That's Sardelli. He went off in the first lap of the first race, and again starting right at the very back. So he's trying to work his way through. We don't know what happened to him. I just caught a glimpse as they went into the first corner. He looked as though he made a mistake, locked it up and was going straight on and probably into somebody else at the same time. But he's now trying to get himself through as well. But Colgiaggio's through there, so he's up into 4th place. And we were left with the battle right behind him, which was raging between those 3 cars.
On board with our leader then. Oh, doesn't get to the apex. And why is that? Is there somebody inside him? His mirror won't show us that. But maybe we'll see the nose of the Alfa. No, it looks as though he just didn't quite get to the apex there because he was compromising the first corner in that sequence for a good run through the rest of them. Larini still leads. Fabrizio Giovanardi in 2nd place. And look at the inclination changes here. This racetrack really does rise and fall. It doesn't show so well when you're looking at the cars, but from the onboards, particularly on the long shots, you can really see the elevation changes. A very scenic circuit. Puts me in mind a little bit of Oulton Park in Great Britain, places like that which have got a lot of elevation changes and a lot of different corners thrown together. Really challenging for the drivers. There is Tarquini using all of the curbing as he comes onto the pit straight, trying desperately to close down this lead pair. But Larini has got breathing space over Giovanardi. I wonder if Giovanardi will just sit there and save it all for the final lap if he's going to make a move at all.
And normally they sit right behind each other. Very, very close quarters. That's not happening at the moment. Giovanardi's being dropped just that little bit. We can see the time there. 1,000th of a second away from 1 whole second. So I would think Larini is actually able to pull away on his own there. Maybe he's got to drop Giovanardi down far enough, then there's a possibility Tarquini could catch up and end up second in this race, but he's got a lot of work to do before he gets anywhere near that position.
So Nicola Larini leads by a second from his teammate Fabrizio Giovanardi. Tarquini in 3rd place, and the race is all about these through. We're midway through it. Join us in a moment as we pick up the action. Welcome back to Brno. We are in the middle of the 2nd race of the Euro Super Touring, and it's being led by the Alfa Romeo pair, Nicola Larini and Fabrizio Giovanardi, in the order in which they finished the first race. And if Larini can win this one, that'll be 3 wins from 4 starts and a 2nd place ahead of his teammate in the championship points, and way ahead of Gabriele Tarquini, the man that the Nord-Auto team really thought was going to be their main rival. We're on board with Roberto Colciaggio, who, like Tarquini, started from the pit lane as a result of their first lap accident in the first race, and he is working around the back of Gianluca Di Lorenzi. Di Lorenzi's BMW, the car right in front of him, holding on.
You can see there the indicator flashing. De Lorenzi knows that Colgiaggio is just that much quicker than what he is, and he stayed on the left-hand side of the circuit, put the indicator on and let him past. It's no good trying to fight and the 2 of them falling off. You've got to get to the end of this race to score points, and he's using his head at that point and deciding that it's easier to let the guy pass and follow him and lose as little time as possible, rather than fight with the guy and lose even more time and maybe be caught by the pack behind. Because remember, in that pack behind, you've got Wallfish with a Honda, and you've got Sardini with a Nissan, and those 2, I'm sure, are looking to try and take the place away from Di Lorenzi in front there.
They'll be very happy indeed to do that, no doubt about it. And Gianluca Di Lorenzi also running for the amateurs points here. So there's a slightly different script for him, really. As long as he can stay up front, he will do, but concentrating more on the separate battle that he's involved in with the other drivers in the field compared to these top-line guys out front. Well, no sign of the foul weather returning, although very black clouds still lurking in the background. A couple of patches of blue there as well as we look through the pit box there of the Nord-Auto team. Yellow flags once more at this sequence. Well, this is a familiar place for cars to go off. Somebody's gone off down there, but the director hasn't seen fit to worry us too much with who it was. At least we know it's neither of the Alphas. And we also assume it's not Gabriele Tarquini, because we would hope that he would have considered that to have been an important omission from the order. 4 laps to go. You mentioned, David, that these 2 are normally absolutely glued together. Well, Giovanardi seems to have got himself velcroed back onto the back of Nicola Larini's car, and they are working as one. Does that mean that as they cross the line with 3 to go, Giovanardi is now starting to think about the end of the race rather than worry about the man who just comes on to finish straight? Gabriele Tarquini in third.
I think so. He was sitting there behind at the beginning of the race, and he wasn't going to make any moves. There's no point in fighting amongst themselves, as we said earlier. Realised that Tarquini is so far behind, there's no way in the world he's going to catch them during this race unless they do something very, very silly. So Giovinazzi is going to sit there, and I can see him just waiting to pounce at the last lap of the race. He'll watch and see exactly what Larini does through all the corners. He'll be weighing it up, and he hasn't waited till the end of the race. He's gone through already.
Well, while the director was watching Sergio Sambatore throwing his Audi around, the Alfas have swapped positions. And Giovinazzi not wasting any time about it either. Maybe he just sat back there a second in arrears and had a look at Larini and maybe tried a couple of things independently of what Larini was doing without therefore showing his hand to his teammate, and then closed right up behind him and immediately made a move. Now the question remains as to whether that will stick or whether Larini, as we've seen him do twice so far in 3 starts, will come back at him and retake the lead to win the race. Oh, Larini drops it! Dear oh dear.
He was trying hard there, very, very hard indeed. I think he realised that when Giovinazzi was obviously quicker, we see him drop to a second behind and then come back right onto his boot lid. So Giovinazzi made the right move there in the end. He obviously felt that he was that much faster and he could actually pull away from his teammate. And his teammate was just trying so hard to hang on to the back of him. He dropped it clean off the circuit. And here we're going to see it again, I think. Pretty shortly it'll come round this corner, and here we go. Off, just ran out of grip, off across the curb, across that little bit of gravel trap was there and down the grass. But back onto the circuit, so he will continue to score lots of points. So while he still has a 15-point lead in the championship at the moment, he's going to lose 5 of those points, so he'll end up at the end of this race still leading the championship. He won't be too worried about that. As he said earlier on, it's a very long championship, there's lots of rounds to go, there's 2 rounds at every meeting, so lots of points to be had for the future. I noticed he still had his headlights on. Now I know you need your headlights to get past as you're coming through the field, but once you're through the field, then you need to switch those headlights off, because lights take energy, and energy is generated by the alternator, and something has to drive the alternator. That's the engine, and that's using power. So if they can use their brains a little bit more, switch the lights off and try and get the best out of the car as possible.
Well, Larini really revelling in the handling of this Alfa in these dry conditions now, really throwing the car around. So too is his teammate Fabrizio Giovinazzi, the race leader, really leaning on their tyres, probably for the first time all weekend. Inside the final lap and a half of the second Euro STC race at Brno, Fabrizio Giovinazzi is our race leader. Took the lead very quickly indeed from Nicola Larini. Larini then chasing him hard. Half a lap later put the car momentarily off onto the grass as he ran wide and a tight right-hander bounced across the gravel onto the grass, back on again without losing much momentum or really much distance either to the third place man. Gabriele Tarquini is still in third in the Honda, but you can see 6 seconds and nearly 7 behind Larini. Larini dropping away from Giovinazzi, and it clearly is the case, I would suggest, that Larini's car not handling as well as Giovinazzi's, and he knows it. Therefore, 2 things. 1, don't go off, and 2, make sure you don't get caught and passed by Tarquini. I think the third possibility, which is pass Giovinazzi and win this one, has already been scratched off his little mental list of to-do things for the afternoon.
Yeah, it's the first time on the basis he gets to the finish we don't say something we shouldn't do. It would be the first time he's beaten Larini this year. Larini's always managed to finish in front, even on the second race at Monza where Gabriele was first, Larini was second and Giovinazzi third. So this will be a good little feather in the cap for Giovinazzi, making a point that, you know, he's still in there, he wants to win the championship and he's not going to let his teammate have it all his own way. But back in the positions, we've got De Lorenzi and Sardelli fighting further down the field. Now they're fighting for their junior positions. Both of those are the junior drivers, and they're only 1 second apart at the moment. So Sardelli managed to win at the first race at Monza that position, so we'll see what happens in this race.
Well, those 2 very evenly matched, the Audi and the BMW, and they are having a good scrap. These 2 pretty evenly matched as well. We saw Giovinazzi making chassis changes to his car in qualifying, and Larini doing a slightly better job of that to head the field up. But it looks as though the chassis engineering on the number 1 car has been superior for the conditions we have just at the moment here at Brno, and that's very much a given at Brno, that no matter what you do, you tend to run a little bit with luck as to whether it works for the prevailing conditions of the time, because nothing has remained constant here apart from the inconsistency of the weather. But Giovanardi has got the best car on the track at the moment. Farini in second place. Tarquini is still edging gradually closer, but it's tenths rather than seconds that he is gaining, and he needs it to be the other way round to stand any chance of upsetting this Alfa 1-2. And Farini with victory in second place. David, as you said, at Monza, victory in second place here at Brno. If he can keep that going throughout the rest of the championship, then that is pretty much going to guarantee him a strong championship challenge all the way to the final round.
Yeah, these two certainly look as though they're going to be the contenders for the championship. They know on their fears were definitely that Tarquini would give them a hard time. Tarquini's managed to make life very difficult for himself by not finishing the first race at Monza and not finishing the first race here at Brno. That's done him no good at all, and to come from that many points behind, although there's a lot of races, he really has an uphill struggle now to get there.
Delight for Giovanardi particularly, and for the Nord Auto Alfa team. Their third 1-2 finish in 4 starts in the Super Racing weekends in the Super Touring category. And Gabriele Tarquini now with a first and a third place and 2 DNFs. That is not what makes a champion. He needs to have a significant improvement of fortunes, and more importantly, needs for things to start going wrong with both the Nord Auto Alfas. Giovanardi at the beginning of the first race was saying, hey guys, I'm on pole position, remember me? I was the Euro STC champion as recently as last year. All this Larini-Tarquini stuff was starting to get him down a little, and I think this is a personal statement as much as anything else from Giovanardi. Hey, don't you forget about me, in the very famous words of somebody or other. So Giovanardi wins from Nicola Larini, but that still leaves Larini as the championship leader from his teammates. The margin, though, has been slightly reduced, and the points gap between them, in fact, with a win apiece and a second place apiece, should be exactly the same as it was leaving Monza. So Larini eased ahead after race 3, and Tarquini pulled him back a little bit after race 4. And with a pair of races for the remaining 8 races, still 16 races to go for these guys to sort it all out. So another good job by the Nord Auto Alfa Romeo team. Another good job as well by the Yas Sport Honda team. 2 inexplicable engine blow-ups for Fabrice Valfish hindered his learning progress this weekend, as well as the dreadful weather. Gabriele Tarquini, another first race incident that put him out of the running and out of the points, and he can ill afford any more of those. He needs a clean slate of finishes, and they need to be first or second places, otherwise he may as well give up and go home, because on the current rate of gaining points, he's going to be embarrassingly down the order. Well, the next Super Racing weekend, of course, is at Magny-Cours. We've still got more action to show you here from Brno, but Magny-Cours, the French Grand Prix venue, may well be a very different kettle of fish for the Honda. That is another high-speed track, and Tarquini should hopefully fare a little better there, hopefully at least for him. Well, there's the results. Di Lorenzi and Sardelli 4th and 5th. And Roberto Colciaggio down there in 9th position behind his teammate Massimo Poggioli. Couldn't get past him in the end, finishing down there in 9th. Well, the Eurosport commentators' transport has finally arrived at Brno. Yes, I am joking. That's my personal helicopter. So the Euro STC then, with the Alphas looking stronger and stronger. And David, difficult times now, really, for Gabriele Tarquini. One definitely his fault, one arguably not his fault, but still the result is the same. He's only scored in half the races so far, and a lot of the amateur drivers are ahead of him, never mind his arch championship rivals in the Alphas.
Yes, it's not good for him. He made his own mistake at Monza and hit the wall there very hard. And I've got to say the accident in the first race here today was a bit of a 50-50 thing. They had a bit of a coming together to start with, and then they parted, but in the next corner they decided to try and run into each other. And this is something that touring car drivers are very bad for. Once somebody gives them a bit of a tap, they feel that they want to give them a bit of a tap back, and that really has spoiled his championship chances. And Roberto, unfortunately, I know to my experience, is very good at running into people. At the end of last season I managed to do a race with him, and he managed to run me off the circuit in a much more harder way than what we've seen today. But it doesn't matter how hard it is. Once you're off, you're off. You're not scoring any points whatsoever.
Understandable but avoidable, I think, will be our answer to that incident.
Fabrizio, that was the 4th race of the season. It was your first win. How do you feel?
I feel good because before I said yes, I will win, it was impossible. I was not able because the other drivers are really faster, and also in this race it was hard to overtake my teammate. This year is very good, but it's a long way.
And it was a great result, a great weekend for the Alfa Romeo team.
Yes, I think so, but must look the Honda because yes, he did 2 mistakes in 2 races, but I think will be dangerous in the other circuit.
Well done, Fabrizio. Thank you.
Yes, they're certainly not going to rest on their laurels, are they? Fabrizio Giovanardi knows what a tough cookie Gabriele Tarquini can be. Understandable incident perhaps, but definitely avoidable. I would have said that first lap crash. He wanted to make up places as quickly as he could here and just overstepped the mark a little bit in his anxiety to stay in touch with the Alphas. So Giovanardi happy with that first win, just to remind everybody that he's still as quick as he was at the end of last season. I don't think Nicola Larini will be particularly worried about finishing in second place. He certainly backed off towards the end and let Giovanardi go. And one of the signs of a good racing driver is to race only within the limits of your car.
Nicola, second place. Well done. That was a good battle that you were having with your teammate Fabrizio.
Yeah, I had a good car at the beginning, but I have misfiring problems after the 5th lap, so it was impossible to contain my teammate. There was not any more engine in the uphill and in the fast in the straight line. So I tried for 2 laps, but he was so quicker than me in acceleration that it was impossible to maintain position.
And it looked as though at one point when you went off the track you might crash. Were you close to crashing then?
When I'm following Giovanardi, no, just it was my firing problem. I lost the control of the car because he cut the engine a lot, and I lost the car for few cents, but it's okay.
First and second today. Well done, Nicola.
Thank you very much. Yeah, like Monza, I want to continue like this.
Thank you.
So there's the answer, David, to why Giovanardi suddenly went from a second back to right up his exhaust pipe, because the Alfa developed a misfire and the engine cut, dropping him off the track there. And as I said, driving to exactly what your car will do, and clearly it would do no more for him. And once he lost the lead, he just concentrated on getting it home with as many points as he possibly could. So sensible racing from Nicola Larini, but you do sense that this is a no-holds-barred contest between Giovanardi and Larini in the 2 Alphas, with a weather eye on what Tarquini is doing. And I have to say, if they have an unavoidable accident that takes them both out, I will be most surprised. So that's it for the Super Touring. The Alfa drivers still leading after another disappointing weekend for Tarquini.